Guitar World just published a new story on their website saying that Fender's credit rating is being downgraded. Moody's, a financial analysis firm, has said that Fender is more likely to default for a variety of factors. Fender's earnings are projected to decline due to factors such as labor inflation, increased promotional activity, pricing pressures, currency headwinds from a strengthening US dollar, and tariffs. What this means is that gear is about to get a whole lot more expensive than it already is. Now, I don't want to point fingers at anyone just yet because this has been an ongoing trend for quite some time. Guitar World had also published an article about a year ago about the rising cost of guitars, noting factors like supply chain issues during the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, conflict in the Middle East, and of course, inflation. The price for raw materials like silica for glass to make tubes, or the price of wood goes up, and then manufacturers have to pass along those costs to consumers to recoup their money. However, it is worth noting that if you take the cost of a guitar in the 50s, which was, somewhere around $300, and then just apply a basic inflation calculator, you get somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,500 today.
Wow!
And I don't think anybody is paying quite that much for an equivalent guitar. One of the big strategies these companies have employed to keep costs down is to push operations offshore. Leveraging cheaper labor costs alongside CNC machines and other modern luthier techniques, you're able to make a very high-quality guitar on par with the American-made instruments that we've come to expect. I and many other bass tubers have been pleasantly surprised at the apparent quality that we've seen from pretty inexpensive instruments made in places like Indonesia and China, to the point where we've all started to question why anyone would pay more than about $1,000 for a bass. But the prices we've come to expect from that are being threatened again, this time by tariffs. Where last year's article speculated that prices were not likely to go down, they rarely ever do, it did say that they were expected to stabilize or stay the same, but that's just really no longer the case because of tariffs. Wait, I'm being told that the tariffs are off. We're saved, the tariffs aren't gonna, No, the tariffs are definitely happening. We're screwed. A tariff is a tax on imports from other countries.
I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made.
The money from tariffs goes to the government just like any other tax, but rather than eating the cost of this tax, importers simply raise the cost of the goods that they import onto the buyer. You and I. The idea behind tariffs is to encourage the production and consumption of domestic or local goods. But in a lot of cases, it just serves to make everything more expensive. Almost no country is equipped to just make everything that they need themselves. Like, the global scale of things just means that we all trade with one another. That's a good thing. A 25% tariff on products from its Ensenada, Mexico manufacturing facility, and an additional 10% tariff on products manufactured in China and imported into the US would increase operating costs by approximately $20 to $25 million. Where is that extra money going to come from? Well, it's going to come from the people that they sell to. They can't afford to just not make $25 million. What's frustrating is that this is going to disproportionately affect the mid and lower tier segments of the market, which means that these tariffs essentially raise taxes on the middle and lower class. The rich are very unlikely to be affected by any of this.
If you worked a little harder, then you'd have a lot more. So the blame and the shame's on you for being so damn poor.
Somewhat counterintuitively, luxury goods are far more stable under these kinds of pressures. In terms of the really huge dollar vintage stuff still trading hands, you have to realize the people who play in that market are really not hit by the price of milk and eggs. I'm sure Ferrari is not having any trouble with new releases sitting on the lot for a while, and Rolex doesn't have any problems. You can still get one of those. It's a different market with different players. Fender has noted a similar sentiment, saying that all of their custom shop guitars enjoy high demand, almost more so as prices go up. If you've ever wondered why companies release such prohibitively expensive guitars, it's actually all part of this bigger strategy to make the next tier down seem more reasonable. You probably can't afford a $5,000 custom shop job from Fender, but if you're looking at the next tier down, which is just like a mass-produced $2,500 instrument, which is more or less the same, that feels a lot more reasonable. You might think that that's a good deal, but it's really not. The psychological warfare that these companies wage on us to consume products is something that you need to be aware of and need to actively fight against. Personally, I've been railing on this consumerist mindset in the music community for ages, but I think now is the right time to really speak up on this. So much of the humor and the culture in musician groups revolves around buying gear. Whether we're showing off our most recent purchase or asking advice on what to buy next, or sharing memes about buying stuff which have never been funny in my opinion, it all perpetuates this consumerist mindset. And I may be way off on this, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I always see way more discussion happening on posts that talk about gear rather than on posts that want to share people's music or get critique on their playing. I want to actively push back on that mentality and create more community and discussion around actually making music. Gear doesn't matter. Your ability to play your bass, adjust your settings to the various contexts you're going to be in, and leverage what you already have is far more important. And lest I come off as being hypocritical because a good number of my videos on this channel are gear reviews, I would argue that a lot of my videos discourage buying stuff at all, or at least they're balanced enough to not come across as shilling for companies. I think you guys would probably be pretty surprised at the number of sponsorship requests that I turn down or just outright ignore. Now, I do love featuring gear, but I want to do it in a way that's more creative or show how a product can be used in a more practical sense. For example, the video that I did on the Daft Punk pedal, the bass synth wah, that's one of my favorite videos I've ever made, and I want more of my gear videos to exist in that same vein. Most of us have everything that we need to make music, but we get FOMO from all that stuff that we don't have. I've made so much music that probably a lot of you haven't even heard of or even aware of with nothing but a bass, a cheap interface, and a bunch of free software. You don't need very much these days, and most of us have a lot more than we actually need. So here's my proposal. Let's shift our culture away from being so gear-centric and back towards actually making and enjoying music. If all that means is just not interacting with or sharing memes that are little more than consumerist propaganda, then I'm happy. That would be great. But I'd actually like to go a step further. There's a channel in the Low End Lobster Discord called The Groove Shop, and the idea was that periodically somebody would post a backing track, and then everybody would, take that track and then record their own bass part to it and then post it in that channel. I love this idea, but there hasn't been a new post in that channel for almost a year. For whatever reason, it really failed to gain traction, but I loved the idea of it, and I want to try and revitalize it. So here's what I want to do. Every month on my Patreon, I will post a backing track for you to download. Take that track, record your own bass line to it, or add a bunch of other stuff to it, I don't care, and then post that back into the comments on that post. At least I think you can do that. If not, we'll figure something else out. But once it's up there, I would love to give you feedback, and maybe I'll even feature some of my favorite submissions. Even though this is on Patreon, it's not something you're gonna have to pay for. If you want to participate, you can do so without having to pay me any money. I don't like paywalling stuff, so I'm just not gonna do it. If you do have the means to support me, I really do appreciate it. That little bit goes a long way towards helping me make these videos, and I really appreciate your support. Speaking of money, we do need to realize that we collectively hold a lot of power based on our spending habits. You can vote in elections, and you should every single time that you can, but voting with your wallet is sometimes even more powerful. We have such a powerful voice when we make smart and informed decisions about who we give our money to. When you buy used or buy local, that money doesn't go into some rich asshole's hedge fund. That goes to somebody's groceries or their house payments, somebody in your local community oftentimes. The Serics that I own were made by a small team of builders in the Chicago area, and I feel like putting my money towards that small group of people helps a segment of society that I care a lot more about than the big corporations and the ultra rich. And if you needed another reason to go with a small independent creator over a big company, you should just go watch my Fender play video.